I was the only one silent in the car, while everyone else was screaming their lungs out. Discordant voices singing along to the song blasting from the car's radio. "Come on, birthday boy, smile a little," my older sister Hazel nudged me. Grinning like an idiot, I scowled at her, and she burst into annoying laughter. They all knew why I wasn't smiling. They all knew I hated McDonald's, but they were making me celebrate my birthday there anyway. Well, it wasn't just my birthday. I guess that's how it goes with family. I shared a birthday with my cousin Luke, who was turning 9. At 15, I wanted to spend the day at the VR game park, or somewhere actually fun, anywhere but McDonald's. But as always, I had been outvoted. So I stayed quiet the whole drive while the rest of the family sang at the top of their lungs, like a bunch of parakeets. By the time we arrived, I was wishing for a hole to open up and swallow me whole. The place was packed, but luckily, there was a table big enough for all of us. Luke was especially happy because Ronald McDonald, the clown mascot, was in attendance. My scowl deepened. Why was the clown here? I hated clowns. They annoyed the hell out of me. It didn't take long for us to order, and within a few minutes, our food was ready. I was a few bites into my Big Mac when the clown approached our table. "Oh, I smell a birthday here," the clown giggled. Luke screamed and danced with joy. "I just love birthdays," the clown giggled again, before he started dancing. Everyone started cheering him on, even Hazel. "Go Ronald! Go Ronald!" They chanted as the clown gyrated and spun like a top, much to my family's delight. I didn't cheer along. I was too busy wondering why a grown man would willingly put on that stupid paint and costume just to act like a fool. I was also wondering what was wrong with my family for finding it funny. I raised my head to look for the waitress. I wanted another glass of orange juice. Instead, I made eyes with the clown. That moment felt like an eternity, though it couldn't have been more than a couple of seconds. His face turned quizzical when he realized I wasn't smiling or cheering like the rest. His red smile dropped, and his face twisted into a grotesque mask. He was angry, but I think I was the only one who noticed. A wave of fear rolled over me, leaving my mouth dry. My heart raced, and my instincts screamed at me. The garish white and red paint no longer looked stupid. It was terrifying. The clown finished his dance and took a bow as my family clapped. "That was great, right, Billy?" Luke squealed, tugging at my arm. "Billy, huh?" the clown inquired, looking at me. I gulped. "Why didn't you laugh, Billy?" the clown asked. His tone was friendly, but there were subtle undertones of menace. I stammered before being saved by the McDonald's staff. "Happy birthday to you," they sang, gathering around our table. The clown gave me one last wintry look before vanishing behind the mess of people who had joined in on the birthday cheer. I was uneasy for the rest of the celebration. I couldn't enjoy the food. I kept thinking about the clown and his angry eyes. After we finished eating, we piled back into the van and began to drive home. I was squished between Hazel and Luke, and I couldn't wait to play some serious COD at home. We had gone only a couple of miles when I noticed it. A van driving right next to us, matching our speed. It was white, with blue and red polka dots. Exactly the kind of van you would expect a clown to drive. As I watched, the windows started to roll down, and to my horror, it was the same Ronald McDonald clown from the restaurant. His eyes searched our van, and when they found me, he grinned like a maniac and screamed, "Why didn't you laugh, Billy?" The wind caught his words, but I heard them clearly. So did my dad. "What the f***? Isn't that the mascot from McDonald's?" my dad exclaimed, gripping the steering wheel tightly. "Ronald is," Luke began, before breaking into a scream. A shock went through the van, and a sharp vibration ran through my body. The cloud had rammed into us with his van. He was laughing maniacally, gearing up to ram us again. My dad floored it, and our van tore through the freeway like a bullet. But the clown wasn't having it. He accelerated too, shouting after us the whole time. "You should have laughed, Billy!" he screamed again, ramming into us from behind. Our van wobbled for a few furious seconds, but my dad managed to get us under control. The mood in our van was grim. Everyone had gone quiet, and Luke had tears running down his face. The following moments were like a sequence from a horror movie. My dad weaving through traffic with sweat on his brow, and the crazed clown hard on our heels like a vengeful spirit. With each bump, he grew bolder. It wouldn't be long before he ran us off the road. I shuddered to think what he'd do if he managed to stop us. Suddenly, a new sound drowned out the laughing clown, the wail of police sirens. The relief that flooded me was like a dam bursting. I almost cried as I watched the clown slow down at the command of the squad car approaching from behind. I watched them arrest the clown in a daze. It was only later that we discovered the clown wasn't affiliated with McDonald's. He was just some random guy who had dressed like their mascot and entered the restaurant as another customer. Sometimes, I wondered if he would have chased us if I just smiled. Every place has an ambience. That built-in feeling it gives you every time you're there. I felt it the most at my grandma's house. The warm smell of pancakes always made me feel at home. I felt it strongly again at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, where I worked as a shift manager. But that feeling was the exact opposite. The sticky floors, the smell of old pizza, flickering light bulbs, and the lifeless, unsettling eyes of the animatronics filled me with dread. Sure, Freddy had a dark history, the kind people whisper about, murders, missing kids, but that was over 30 years ago. It was just a regular pizza place now. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. As a shift manager, my job was pretty simple. Make sure everyone was doing their part. Most of the time, I was on the day shift, which I liked because I hated doing graveyard shifts. I spend most of my time just walking around, checking to see if everything was in order. "How are you, boss man?" Eric waved as I passed. I smiled back and waved. Eric was 16, a part-time technician who handled the arcade. The kid was so full of life. It was like he brightened the entire place. Everyone loved him. "Great work on that Street Fighter glitch," I said, giving him a thumbs up. "Aw, thanks, boss man," he beamed. I continued with my rounds. Through the kitchen, the dining area, the restrooms. Last, I went to the section with the animatronics. I don't know why, but they always made me feel uneasy. I inched closer to Bonnie the bunny to inspect one of its eyes when... "Hello?" "Jesus!" I jumped back. It wasn't the animatronic that had spoken. It was Philip, another technician who usually worked with Eric. "Sorry, boss man," he said with a grin. "You almost gave me a heart attack," I muttered, punching him playfully on the shoulder. Philip and Eric were inseparable. Despite the fact that Philip was 5 years older, Eric was loud and energetic, while Philip was quiet and reserved. Somehow, their friendship just worked, and it was a joy to have them around. After my rounds, I went back to my office. Something was on my desk. A folded note? I picked it up, and my head tilted in confusion. Was it some kind of anonymous complaint? I unfolded the note, and my brows furrowed as I read the pristine handwriting. "Mr. Afton's will transcends death." Afton? That name was vaguely familiar. The previous owner of Fazbear Entertainment, Freddy's parent company, there had been controversy around him, involving missing kids and dark rumors. I remembered someone saying he died years ago. I scowled, balling up the note, and I threw it in the trash. If this was someone's idea of a joke, it wasn't funny. I finished the shift, annoyed, If I had known that would be my last day of normalcy, I would have savored it. The next day, things started out normal enough. The restaurant was packed, so workload was heavier than usual. I was running around helping waiters serve when I saw something. Just out of the corner of my eye, a shadow darting past my office entrance. I handed off the tray I was carrying and hurried to investigate. In a few quick strides, I was inside, but no one was there, just another note on my desk, written in the same pristine handwriting. Mr. Afton will wait no longer. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. My heart raced. There was only one way in and out of my office. If someone had come in, I would have seen them. Who the hell was writing these notes? Why were they so obsessed with a man who'd been dead for over 30 years? I decided to ask the team if they had any clue. Before I could, Philip and Eric came up to me. Boss man, can we head out early? I've got a special project, and Philip's driving me, Eric asked. I almost said no, but they'd been working hard lately. They deserved a break. I nodded and gave them the thumbs up. As I watched them leave, the uneasy feeling in my gut intensified. I couldn't explain it, but I felt like something terrible was about to happen. When I saw the police cars later, I knew. I knew before they even told me what had happened. Someone or something had been manipulating things from the shadows to bring out great evil. I had felt it in the notes and in the oppressive air of the restaurant, like a gestating behemoth on its way to give birth to a calamity. Eric was dead. Philip had killed him. I couldn't believe it. My mind went numb as the officer told me how they'd found Eric's tortured body, handcuffed and beaten. Philip, quiet, reserved Philip, had done this? Why? What would have driven him to such madness? We shut down Freddy's for a few days, trying to make sense of it all. I was locking up the office when I saw another note on my desk. Mr. Afton is still lonely. Suddenly, Freddy's felt like a hell on earth. The emptiness of the place, the cold silence, the looming presence of the animatronics. It was all too much. I left, and I never went back. Bill keeps saying I should go in there and kill them, came the voice, low and unsettling, like a whisper barely meant to be heard. 911, what's your emergency? I said, thinking I must have misheard. The line had cracked to life with an eerie quality that made me sit up a little straighter. Bill? The voice enunciated slowly, like a single word lingering on the tongue. Bill said I should kill them. Sir, what's your name? Can you tell me exactly what's happening? Who is Bill? The voice on the other end of the line felt off, too calm. But I've been doing this for long enough to not jump to conclusions. Calls like this came in every now and then. 9 times out of 10, it was just some drunk with too much time on his hands. Bill says I have to do it, the man continued, his tone sounding detached, as though he were reciting a line from memory. Sir, I'm going to need you to tell me your name. Where are you right now? I asked, leaning in slightly, my fingers poised over the keyboard. Silence, just the steady sound of his breathing. Then, after a pause that stretched a little too long, he spoke again. I don't want to go in there, but Bill says I have to. I leaned back in my chair, picturing the caller in my head. I learned to paint a mental image over the years. A faceless guy crouching in the shadows, maybe with a bottle in one hand, his cell phone pressed to his ear. All right, let's take it easy, okay? Bill can wait. Why don't you tell me where you are right now? I'm in the bushes in front of their house, 22 Pringle Lane, he whispered, barely concealing the tremors in his voice. Bill told me to bring my gun. I'm waiting until they turn off the lights, but Bill keeps saying I have to go in now. A chill crept down my spine. My fingers hovered over the buttons to dispatch units immediately. This wasn't the same as someone calling from their home in a moment of anger or confusion. This guy was outside, crouching in the bushes of someone else's home, possibly armed. The tension shifted. It was no longer a routine call. "Listen," I said, my tone firm but calm. "You don't have to do anything Bill says. You're in control here, okay? Just put down the gun and take a deep breath." Suddenly, I heard barking in the background, sharp and insistent. The sound startled me, jarring against the eerie calm of his voice. It was close, maybe even right next to him. "Are you being attacked by an animal? Is there a dog near you?" I asked, hoping to ground him in something, anything, that could keep him talking. He was quiet for a moment before his voice came back, low and contemplative. "The dog? No, that's just Bill asking why I haven't gone in yet. He's not happy." I froze, the pieces falling into place with a sickening dread. "Excuse me?" He let out a shaky breath, one that sounded more resigned than fearful. "Bill speaks through the dog. He tells me what I have to do." The words hung in the air, thick and heavy. This man wasn't just drinking. He was unhinged. This was the kind of caller I always dreaded. The ones who could become completely lost in their own delusions, willing to take orders from voices only they could hear. In my years on the job, I'd seen plenty of twisted situations, but there's something more terrifying about a person who believes with absolute certainty that something or someone is controlling them. I had already dispatched a unit, but I knew the chances they make it in time were slim. My heart pounded as I struggled to keep my voice calm, even soothing. "You don't have to listen to Bill. You can just walk away." Silence again, then barking started up, louder this time, as if urging him forward. Each bark felt like a ticking clock, counting down to something terrible. "Sir, are you still there?" I asked, trying to keep him with me, trying to break through whatever part of him was still grounded to reality. "Bill's angry," he muttered. His voice was quivering now, frantic and strained. "He says I'm taking too long. Says I'll never be free if I don't do this." My mouth went dry. "You don't have to do anything. Do you hear me? Just take a breath, put the gun down, and walk away. You can be free. You don't need Bill's permission." There was a moment of quiet. The dog's barking continued in the background, relentless. I imagined him there, crouching in those bushes, face twisted with conflict, his grip tightening around the gun as he wrestled with the voices in his mind. "Sir, sir," I shouted into the phone, desperate to reach him. "Please talk to me. You're not alone in this. We can work through this together, okay?" But my voice might as well have been a whisper in the wind. The only response was silence, followed by a brief, muffled shuffling sound. Then, all at once, the silence was shattered by gunfire. 2, 3 shots in rapid succession, echoing in the background like thunder. I heard a scream, blood-curdling and primal, that cut off as suddenly as it had begun. The line went dead. I sat there, hands still gripping the receiver. The silence that followed was almost deafening. My heart hammered in my chest, a sickening throb that pulsed through me as I tried to process what had just happened. By the time the police unit arrived, it was too late. They found an elderly couple inside, both dead from gunshot wounds. The man, who we later learned was named Ted, a local drifter with a troubled history, had been captured without a struggle. When questioned, he insisted he wasn't responsible, that Bill made him do it. As for the dog, the supposed voice of Bill, there was no trace. No one in the neighborhood had reported seeing any stray dog, and nothing turned up in the investigation. Whether the dog had ever existed, or if it was simply a manifestation of his fractured mind, no one could say for sure. Everyone says it was drugs. Cocaine, they say, can send you into violent delusions. But they didn't see what I saw that night. They didn't hear the guttural voice dripping with malice, didn't witness the frenzied look in her eyes, or feel the unnatural strength that surged through her hands. To them, she was just another crazy customer. For me, the trauma wakes me up at night, drenched in sweat, heart pounding, replaying the horror over and over. It started innocently enough. A car glided smoothly into the drive-thru window, and I prepared to take the order. I'd been working at McDonald's for a year now, and the drive-thru was my preferred spot. Simple, routine, predictable. "Can I have an order of McNuggets, please?" The woman's voice was steady, almost pleasant. I glanced at her briefly. Mid-30s, blonde, with a touch of makeup. "Sorry, we're not serving those right now," I replied, flashing her a polite smile. I waited for her to choose something else. "I said I wanted McNuggets," she repeated, her voice hardening, eyes narrowing in a scowl. "Sorry, ma'am, we don't have them at the moment. We start to serve those around lunch." My smile faltered. "We have other great options," I began. She cut me off, her voice raising to a menacing shout. "Shut up! Shut the hell up! You better keep that mouth closed unless it's to give me my McNuggets!" Her scream rattled me, and I instinctively stepped back. I'd dealt with angry customers before, but this was different. The air around her seemed to crackle with something dark, a malevolent energy that chilled my blood. "Ma'am?" I tried again. That's when she growled, a low, animalistic sound, something no human throat should ever produce. "Give me McNuggets," she snarled, her hands shooting through the window, cold as death, her fingers wrapped around my arm, icy and lifeless, like the touch of a corpse. "What the hell?" I yanked my arm back, heart hammering in my chest, but she wasn't letting go. "McNuggets!" she growled again, her grip tightening like a vice, dragging me closer as if I were nothing more than a rag doll. "What's going on over there?" Ernie, my manager, shouted from behind me, but I couldn't answer. The words were frozen in my throat, trapped by sheer terror. "Don't make me assume my final form," the woman hissed, fully out of the car now, her fingers digging deep into my arm, leaving crescents of pain in their wake. I pulled away in desperation, slamming the window shut with trembling hands. My pulse thudded in my ears. I could see her through the cracked glass, a distorted silhouette, growling incoherently. But amidst the garbled words, one thing remained clear. McNuggets. Then she was gone. Bang! Something hit the window like a sledgehammer, shattering the glass into a shower of shards. "F***ing McNuggets!" came the guttural growl again. Another crash. This time, it was a water bottle hurled with frightening force, as though she was launching a missile. I peeked through the shattered glass, and my heart seized. Where the woman had stood, there loomed a hulking figure, a reptilian monstrosity, mottled green skin glistening in the morning sun. Its eyes were yellow, slitted, and its mouth stretched wide, with jagged, sharp teeth. It hissed, its rancid breath seeping through the opening, filling the air with the stench of decayed meat. I screamed, staggering backwards. For a moment, the world tilted, and when I blinked, the woman was there again, just as she'd been before, smiling, calm. But the stench lingered. The sickening smell of that creature's breath hung heavy in the air. Had I imagined it? The logical part of my brain screamed that I had, but the trembling in my limbs told a different story. I stood, frozen, as she climbed back into her car, revving the engine and peeling off to the night. "What a crazy lady," Ernie muttered, clapping me on the shoulder, with a chuckle, but I couldn't answer. I just stared after the taillights fading into the distance, trying to process what I'd just witnessed, a horror that felt too real to be a hallucination. Doing grunt work is a pain, but it pays the bills, so I don't have a choice. Most of the gigs I get are unloading gigs, landscaping, and helping out at building sites. The last one is exhausting, but it pays the most, so whatever I get wind of a building site, I always make my way there and offer my services. "It's an easy job, Jackie, and they're paying good money too," Sonny said over the phone. Sonny is my best friend. We were both in the same business of being jacks of all trades. "Say less, mate. I'll be there in 10. I hung up and started walking to the bus stop. Sonny had come across a construction site just a few miles away from where I stayed, and they were hiring. The opportunity couldn't have come at a better time because I was strapped for cash. True to my word, I got to the site exactly in 10 minutes. There were already lots of people there, grunts like me in coveralls and work suits, corporate types in three-piece suits, and random passerbys that stopped by to look. I understand why. Demolition was taking place. The building looked like a random pizzeria, with a blinking sign out front that read Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. An animatronic bear in the top hat was waving. It was a wonder the lights on the sign were still working. The building was old and dilapidated. I wonder how long it had been abandoned. "Clear!" someone shouted. The ground vibrates with the sound of an approaching bulldozer. Instinctively, I took a step back. The bulldozer hit the building from the left, collapsing half of the wall. The brickwork toppled with a thud, revealing a sight that made my breath catch in my throat. Part of the floor had gone with the wall, leaving a gaping hole with rickety stairs descending into the darkness. "What the hell is down there?" a voice asked behind me, before Sonny slapped my shoulder. "Beats me," I muttered. "They should just tear it all down." We stared into the abyss and waited for the bulldozer to roll back, but nothing happened. "Grunts, we're going in," a burly foreman-looking type shouted. "What?" Sonny and I said at the same time. "You want to get paid, right? Get in there, there could be valuables." I was skeptical, but I needed the money. Apparently, so did Sonny, and 7 other guys, because we found ourselves trudging down the dilapidated stairs into the cold darkness. The smell of mold hit our nostrils first, sour and thick, making me want to gag. In the dim light of Sonny's flashlight, I could make out a storage room of some kind, like a basement where a pizzeria had dumped everything after they went out of business. Greasy burner stoves stood in one corner. Sections of the wall was blackened with smoke stains. A pile of discarded uniforms lay in a heap, matted mops leaning against the wall. But the creepiest sight of all, a lineup of withered animatronics. Their plastic eyes staring ahead, some with exposed metallic innards. They stood in a twisted mockery of life, their garish, peeling faces frozen in a permanent grin. Sonny's flashlight flickered over them, casting long shadows that seemed to breathe with the stillness of the room. One of the animatronics, a rabbit with half of its face missing, looked like it was reaching out towards us, its arms locked in mid-motion. "Hell no," Sonny whispered. Suddenly a sound, high-pitched like children laughing. It echoed through the basement, bouncing off the walls. I whipped around, searching the darkness. "Did you hear that?" Sonny nodded, his face pale. Then the temperature dropped. A dense fog began to rise from the ground, curling around our feet like tendrils. It swallowed the room, engulfing us, making it impossible to see more than a few feet ahead. "Jackie?" Sonny's voice quivered. "I'm right here, man," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, but my heart was racing. The fog was unnatural, thick, cold, and suffocating. The others started disappearing into it, one by one. First the guy in front of me. Then someone behind me gasped before his voice was swallowed by the fog. "Where are you guys?" I shouted. No answer. Panic set in. I swung around, desperate to find Sonny. But all I saw were fleeting shapes, shadows moving in the mist, and then the animatronics. They were moving, flickering in and out of view. Their rusty limbs jerked as they shuffled closer. I saw the bear, its top hat crooked, its hollow eyes gleaming in the fog. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. Fear clawed at my throat. And then I saw him. A silhouette in the shadows. A man. No, not just a man. A figure, tall and thin, lurking in the darkness with kids gathered around him, their face locked in unnatural, vacant smiles. It was him. Afton. Suddenly I remembered all the disturbing stories I heard about Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria, and the tall, murderous man that was in the center of all those horrors. I could feel his gaze pierce through the fog, chilling me to the bone. "Sonny!" I yelled. My voice cracked as I sprinted towards where I thought the stairs were. The laughter of the children grew louder, the cacophony that rang in my ears. Finally, I found the stairs and bolted up, my feet barely touching the ground. The air hit me as I burst out of the basement. I collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. The fog was gone. The animatronics, the laughter, everything was gone. Sonny and the others were there too, coughing, disoriented, but alive. We stared at each other, our faces white with shock. The foreman came over. "What the hell happened down there?" We couldn't answer. We just pointed at the stairs. A team went down after us, but when they came back up, they said there was nothing down there. No fog, no moving animatronics, just lifeless junk. But I knew what I saw, and I'd never forget it. My shift was almost over when the call came in. The clock on my monitor read 11:47 p.m., and I already had started my end-of-shift routine, organizing reports from what had been a relatively quiet Tuesday night. The line cracked with static, and I could hear panicked breathing on the other end, a sound that made me sit up straighter in my chair. After 6 years as a dispatcher, you develop a sixth sense for these things. The difference between a routine emergency and something worse. I took a deep breath and adjusted my headset. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead in our nearly empty call center, most of the other dispatchers having already cleared out for the night shift change. 911, what's your emergency? The words rolled off my tongue with practiced ease, though something about this call made my skin crawl. At first, there was nothing but a shaky breath, the kind that makes your own chest tighten in response. Then came a whisper, almost too soft to catch, like autumn leaves scraping against pavement. "There's someone outside my house. I've heard him for days now. He's watching me. I'm so scared." My hand tightened on my mouse as I opened a new incident report. Calls like these were always tense, but something about this one felt different. A low-level hum of unease I couldn't shake. Maybe it was the raw terror in her voice, or maybe it was the way the static on the line seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat. "Can you tell me your name?" I kept my voice steady, professional, though my own pulse had quickened. "It's Charlotte." Her voice cracked on the second syllable. "Okay, Charlotte. Where are you right now?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard, ready to input her location. The call center felt suddenly colder, though I knew the temperature hadn't changed. I started picturing her in my mind's eye. "At home?" she whispered. "I'm in the closet. I don't want him to see me." I could hear hangers softly clicking in the background, imaging her trying to make herself smaller behind hanging clothes. "Good. Stay hidden and quiet. Don't hang up. I'm sending officers to your location. They'll be there soon." Quickly, I entered her address, 1247 Maple Grove Road, relaying it to dispatch. Officer Menendez and his partner were closest, about 8 minutes out. "Stay on the line, Charlotte. I'm right here with you," I said, trying to keep her calm as I listened to her shallow breaths. "It started last week," she said, her voice wavering like a candle flame in the wind. "I heard footsteps outside my window, then scratches on the wall. I thought it was just an animal at first, but then I saw him. Just a shadow lurking." Notes the clicking of keys seeming too loud in a quiet room. "Do you see him now?" "No, but I know he's out there," she breathed. "Yesterday, I found my back door unlocked. I never leave it unlocked. Never. And last night I heard him outside my bedroom window. He was humming something. An old lullaby, I think." A new kind of terror settled into my stomach, cold and heavy as stone. I'd heard hundreds of scary stories over the line, but this one was getting under my skin. Her fear was real, palpable. It reached through the phone line and wrapped its cold fingers around my throat like a lifeless hand. "Charlotte, you're doing great. Just keep quiet and stay on the line." I checked the dispatch screen, 6 minutes out. Too long. There was a faint creak on her end, and she whispered, a sound so small it might have come from a child. "He's coming," she whispered, her voice tight with terror. "He's trying the front door. I can hear the handle turning." The sound of her rapid, shallow breathing filled my headset. I kept my own voice calm, controlled, though my hands were shaking. "Stay as quiet as you can. Help is almost there." The unit was just 4 minutes away now. The seconds ticked by, dragging out painfully as we waited. In the background, I heard more creaking, a faint scraping noise, and then silence. The kind of silence that fills your ears like cotton wool, that makes your heart stutter in your chest. "Charlotte?" I said softly. "Are you still there?" Her voice broke. "He's in the house. He's in here. I can smell him. The same horrible stench that was on my pillowcase this morning." My heart raced. I wanted to say something, anything, to keep her calm. But before I could, I heard her scream. A shrill, unnerving sound that quickly rose in tempo and cut off abruptly. The line stayed connected, dead quiet except for the soft static. I waited, hoping, my throat tight with unspoken words. It was only minutes later that Officers Menendez and Reynolds arrived. But by then, there was no sign of her. Her phone lay on the closet floor, still connected to our call. The room was in shambles, her belongings scattered like fallen leaves, but she was gone. Just gone. As I ended the call, that silence followed me home, a cold emptiness that settled in deep. Even now, months later, I still think about Charlotte. But that final scream, Sometimes, on quiet nights, when I'm alone in the call center, I swear I can still hear it echoing in my headset, along with the sounds of something scratching at the walls. Back in school, I often asked the same question whenever we studied people like Adolf Hitler or other notorious figures. Why did anyone listen to him? I used to believe that only inherently evil people followed evil instructions. But now, as I sit alone in my dimly lit apartment, a cold, unnatural chill seeps into my bones as I recall the event that shattered that naive belief. April had only been with us for 4 months. She was quiet, diligent, and always kept to herself. There was just something sweet about her, a splash of innocence that made everyone treat her like their little sister. She was the last person anyone would want to hurt. It started with Edith, our assistant manager, stormed out of her office like someone possessed, her eyes wild and frantic. Her gaze darted around the room until it locked onto April, narrowing with something almost primal. I could swear for a second Edith's pupils elongated like a serpent's. "April, in my office, now," Edith commanded, her voice harsh and almost inhuman, as though something else were speaking through her. April stood frozen, pale as death, her wide eyes reflecting on an all too familiar fear. She knew something was terribly wrong. We all did, though none of us dared to speak. "What's going on?" I asked, stepping forward. But Edith didn't acknowledge me. Her eyes were locked onto April. April hesitated, but slowly made her way towards Edith's office. Every step felt like a march to her doom. The air was colder now, almost unnaturally so, and a strange, low humming sound filled the room, though no one seemed to notice but me. Inside the office, things escalated quickly. Edith was on the phone, her voice low and guttural, as though the line connected to something far darker than just another human being. "Deputy Jenkins," she hissed. "You're sure she has it? The purse?" Her voice dripped with an eerie malevolence. April trembled. "I didn't steal anything," she whimpered, her voice cracking with terror. "Shut up!" Edith's voice boomed with an unnatural force, her eyes gleaming with something dark and sinister. "The deputy says you need to strip now." April looked at me, pleading silently, but I couldn't move. Something unseen. I wanted to scream, to shout, to help her, but all I could do was watch as April began to undress, her hands shaking uncontrollably. Edith's face twisted into a cruel smile, and for the briefest moment her skin seemed to ripple as though something horrendous was crawling underneath. "Jumping jacks," she spat, her voice drooping into an almost demonic growl. "Do them. The deputy says you're hiding stolen goods in your clothes. We'll shake them out of you." April's tears streamed down her face as she began the humiliating exercise, her body shuddering with every motion. The light in the room flickered, casting strange shadows on the walls that seemed to writhe and shift unnaturally. My mind screamed at me to do something, anything, but I remained frozen, paralyzed by the suffocating dread that filled the room. Unable to bear it any longer, I stumbled out of the office and into the hallway, collapsing against the wall. Something dark had taken hold of Edith. Something inhuman. I could feel it, creeping through the cracks of my mind like icy fingers. Minutes passed, though they felt like hours, before I finally gathered the courage to return. As I entered the office, the smell hit me first, a thick, rancid stench of decay and something metallic. But it only lasted for a second, and my nostrils cleared to take in the pine-scented air freshener we use in the office. Edith stood above April, her face twisted into a grotesque, otherworldly grin, her eyes glowing with a faint, sickly yellow. April was on the floor, curled into a ball, her sobs barely audible. "Reggie is handling it now," Edith hissed, her voice layered with an echo that didn't belong to her. "The deputy demanded punishment." That's when I noticed that Reggie, Edith's fiancé, was now in the office as well. Reggie was there, but he wasn't himself. His eyes had gone black, completely black, like a void itself had swallowed them whole. His lips moved in silent prayer, but it wasn't any prayer I'd ever heard. "Stop!" I screamed, my voice finally breaking free from whatever dark grip it had held me. But Reggie didn't hear me, or maybe he couldn't. His fingers twitched in the air as if something unseen was guiding him, and a twisted, demonic smile spread across his face. From the shadows behind him, a figure emerged, a dark silhouette with eyes that burned like embers. It wasn't human. It couldn't be. It's a grin that stretched too wide, revealing rows of sharp, jagged teeth, dripping with something black and viscous. "Deputy Jenkins?" Edith whispered, her voice filled with awe as the demonic figure stepped into the light, its twisted form casting unnatural shadows on the walls. April let out a terrifying scream, and I finally found my strength. I charged at Reggie, knocking him to the ground. The demonic figure snarled, its voice like nails on glass, but it recoiled at the sound of police sirens approaching in the distance. As quickly as it had come, the darkness began to fade. Reggie's eyes cleared, and Edith's collapsed, her body trembling as if she had been used as a puppet. The demonic presence evaporated like smoke, leaving only a cold, eerie silence in its wake. The police arrived moments later, but by then, the true horror had passed. Reggie and Edith were taken away, both claiming they had been following orders. They repeated the name Deputy Jenkins over and over, but there was no record of any such person. As I sat in the aftermath, surrounded by the wreckage of that terrible day, I realized the truth. Something evil doesn't need a reason. It just needs a way. I don't know what happened to April. She quit right after. I heard she sued McDonald's and won, but I don't think any amount of money can ever make up for what she had gone through. Getting a job at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza was the worst decision of my life. Not a day goes by that I don't regret setting foot in that cursed place. What happened there left me scared, paranoid, always checking the shadows, always searching for an exit. I feel like I'm constantly on the run, with demons from hell on my trail, just waiting for me to slip up. But before I tell you more about what made me like this, go ahead and like this video and subscribe. It all started when I finished high school. Freddy's was the only place hiring, and despite my mom's warnings to find work elsewhere, I took the job. I didn't care about the creepy rumors that surrounded the place. Sure, the animatronics were unsettling, but they were just that, lifeless machines that couldn't hurt a fly. Or so I thought. The first time I felt uneasy was on Friday night, my third shift. Business was slow, and I welcomed the chance to take breaks between waiting tables. I was setting a pizza in front of a family when I heard a creak from the back. I froze, listening. Another creak? What the hell? There wasn't supposed to be anyone back there. Excusing myself from the table, I pushed open the door marked staff only and entered a narrow passageway leading to the storage room. The dim light of a dirty bulb cast eerie shadows over rows of broken animatronics. I stood there, my eyes scanning the rickety figures, watching for movement. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw a bear turn its head. Fear hit me like an avalanche. I quickly backed away, my gaze locked on the Freddy Fazbear animatronic. I had to be imagining it. I was tired. It was hot. My mind was playing tricks on me. I forced a laugh as I backed out of the room, but the customer stared at me as if I lost my mind. "Bunch of druggies, these kids," an old man muttered to his equally aged companion. The comment annoyed me, but the boss was on leave, so I let it go. That night, I didn't hear any more strange sounds or witness anything unusual, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something sinister was at work. Suddenly, my mom's reservations made sense. By the fourth night, nothing out of the ordinary happened. The place was packed with a never-ending stream of customers, mostly kids playing video games or with the animatronics. "Busy night, huh?" I said to Elmo. "The busiest. I can't wait to get home and take a hot shower," he replied. "Same here," I muttered, though I could feel the sinister presence growing stronger. It was like a storm was coming, an evil storm that would bring death in its wake. On the fifth night, it was worse. The malevolent energy was palpable, like a current of ill intent coursing through the air. My hands shook as I delivered pizzas, my heart racing with dread. Do you feel that?" I asked Elmo. "Yeah, it's very cold today," he said, oblivious. He couldn't sense it, but I could. Was I losing my mind? Maybe, but deep down, I knew I was right. Something was in the air. "Hey, don't do that," I said to a kid tugging at the bear animatronics. The child giggled and ran back to their table. When I looked up at the bear, its eyes followed me. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end. I was sure of it. The animatronics' dead eyes were moving. "Death," someone whispered over my shoulder. I spun around frantic, but there was no one there. Then came the unmistakable sound of a gunshot, followed by breaking glass. Screams erupted around me. Instinctively, I dove to the ground, covering my head as glass rained down. The shots continued for what felt like an eternity, then suddenly stopped. I cautiously lifted my head to see the aftermath. Kids were crying, parents frantically checking them over. Broken glass littered the floor. But the worst of it all was just outside. An unmoving figure lay in a growing pool of crimson. There was no question. The man was dead. I stared at the lifeless body in horror, recalling the chilling whisper that had foretold his death. I glanced at the animatronics, but they were lifeless once more. No hint of the sinister movements I'd witnessed earlier. I must have stood there longer than I realized, because the next thing I remember was the first responder shaking me. "Are you okay, kid? Are you hit anywhere?" No, I'm okay," I mumbled. The EMT moved away to help others. It took a while to deal with the aftermath, but I wasn't there for most of it. The moment I was coherent enough, I quit my job. After 5 nights at Freddy's, I knew I was lucky to have made it out alive. The first time I ever called 911, I was 18 years old. It started as an average Tuesday. Sunny day, busy streets, the sweet smell of spring in the air. A beautiful day. But what happened later turned it to a nightmare and left me with the mental scars that sometimes wake me up at night, sweating and panting. I was home alone. My parents had gone on a business trip and wouldn't be back until the next day. I was pretty excited to have the house all to myself, but not for the reasons you might think. Other kids my age would probably throw a house party or invite a boy over, but not me. I liked the peace and quiet, the feeling of being alone with my thoughts for just a bit. It was nothing against my parents. They were wonderful. So I spent the morning just chilling, watching Netflix. Around tea time, I went to the Starbucks nearby to grab a coffee and some cookies. It wasn't far, so I walked there, even though I could have taken my mom's car. I was almost home when I started to get an odd feeling, a prickling sensation right between my shoulder blades, like someone was watching me. I turned around, but no one was there. Just an empty street. Silent and still. I felt a chill creep up my spine and started walking faster. By the time I got home, I was laughing at myself for being so paranoid. It was dumb, Really? Sure, I lived in a secluded neighborhood where the next neighbor was half a kilometer away, but it was safe. Towards sunset, I decided to get some apples from the orchard on our property. I had just picked a few when I heard a voice from the shadows under the peach trees. "Could I have an apple?" I let out a little scream and jumped back. It was a woman. A dirty, bed-ragged woman with bloodshot eyes and yellow teeth. She looked homeless. What are you doing here?" I stammered. "Oh, I just got lost. Then I saw this beautiful orchard from the road and just had to pop in." "I make a mean apple pie," she drawled, smiling creepily, her yellow teeth on full display. She was moving towards me. Instinctively, I backed away. That's when I realized she towered over me. I'm 5'0", and this woman was at least 6'5". "I think I should go," my voice tight with fear. "Just one apple, little girl. Surely I can have that," she leered. I didn't respond. My mind was racing in every direction. There was something in her eyes, something unhinged, that filled me with terror. She kept advancing, and I kept backing away. The red glow of the sunset outlined her tall frame as she drew closer, her eyes bulging unnaturally. Then out of nowhere, I threw my arms up, and she flinched. Taking my chance, I pivoted on my heel and bolted towards the house. I heard her behind me, her voice echoing, "Don't run from me!" I reached the house with just a second to spare, slamming the door shut. A loud impact followed as her body crashed against the wood. "Let me in, you bitch!" she growled. My hands shook as I fumbled for my phone. Backing away from the door, I dialed 911. "911, what's your emergency?" came a calm voice. "There's a woman here. Please, please," I stammered. "Can you tell me your name and what's going on?" the operator asked. I took a shaky breath. "Allison? My name is Allison. There's a woman outside my house. I think she's crazy. I think she wants to hurt me. Please help." "Okay, Allison, where are you?" the operator asked softly, trying to keep me calm. 865 Regent Road?" I whispered, shaking uncontrollably. "Okay, we have a unit close by. They'll be there in 8 minutes, he assured me. "Please, hurry," I began, but my voice froze as I heard the unmistakable crack of something striking the door. I moved to the window. She was in front of the door with an axe, probably taken from our shed. "Let me in," she roared, each word punctuated by the axe hitting the door. I watched in horror as the wood began to splinter. "Allison, can you tell me what's happening?" the operator asked, his voice now just a distant hum. All I could focus on was the sound of the axe. The door was breaking. I knew it wouldn't hold. "Oh my God, she's going to get in. I'm going to die," I whispered, curling into a ball, frozen with fear. Time blurred as I lay there, the cold floor pressing against my body. The splintering wood echoed in my head, drowning out everything. The door finally gave way. I felt hands on me, but I couldn't bring myself to open my eyes. I was too terrified. It felt like there was more than a pair of hands, like it was a crowd around me. I kicked and screamed, thinking she'd broken through. I fought with everything I had, but then I heard calm voices around me. Forcing my eyes open, I realized it was the police. They had gotten through just in time. Looking back, I know how close I came to being hurt that night. The police arrived as promised, but they found no signs of the woman. They had to break down the door to reach me. I hadn't realized that, in my terror, I'd stopped responding to their calls. That night, what started as an average Tuesday left a scar I won't ever forget.